Lila stood, her legs shaky but functional, as SCI-FI moved among the wounded in the shelter. It was a ragtag group of survivors, civilians, wounded soldiers, and terrified children, all huddled together in the dim light of a subterranean bunker. The air was thick with despair, and the smell of blood and sweat lingered like a curse. The alien's presence was a stark contrast to the bleakness. Its serene glow illuminated the shelter like a gentle beacon, drawing eyes filled with both hope and fear. SCI-FI moved with deliberate grace, pausing before each injured human and offering its miraculous milk. The effects were immediate and astonishing. Broken limbs straightened, torn flesh mended, and even the sickly pallor of radiation burns faded into healthy pink. Lila observed in awe. She had seen human doctors perform miracles on the battlefield, but this was something else entirely. It wasn't just physical healing, there was a profound emotional weight lifted from every recipient. The survivors' hollow eyes regained a spark of life. "Why are you doing this?" Lila asked when SCI-FI finished tending to the last of the wounded. The alien straightened, its luminous tendrils shifting in a pattern Lila couldn't quite decipher. "It is my nature," SCI-FI replied. "To heal is the highest purpose. To see life flourish is the greatest reward." Lila studied the alien, her soldier's instincts still wary despite its kindness. "You're putting yourself in danger just by being here. The Valerii aren't known for mercy." SCI-FI's expression softened, though its alien features made it difficult to read. "Danger is inevitable in the path of a healer. If I feared it, I would cease to be who I am." Before Lila could respond, a muffled explosion echoed through the bunker. The Valerii were closing in. The survivors stirred uneasily, and panic threatened to spread. Lila immediately took charge, her military training kicking in. "Stay calm," she barked, her voice cutting through the rising murmurs. "We're moving to the secondary exit. Everyone, stick together." SCI-FI approached her, its calm presence a stabilizing force. "I will assist you," it said. "But the injured cannot move quickly. Is there another way?" Lila hesitated. There was an old maintenance tunnel that led out of the shelter, but it was a risky route, narrow, unstable, and prone to cave-ins. Still, it was their best shot. "This way," she said, leading the group toward the tunnel. SCI-FI followed closely, supporting a limping soldier who had only partially healed. The alien's strength was surprising, its slender form belying its endurance. As they navigated the dark, winding passage, the group's fear hung heavy in the air. The faint sounds of Valerii clicks and hisses grew louder, echoing through the walls like a predator's growl. Lila's grip tightened on her rifle, her mind racing for a plan. They reached a fork in the tunnel. Lila paused, glancing between the two paths. Her memory of the bunker's layout was hazy, and choosing the wrong direction could doom them all. SCI-FI stepped forward, its glowing tendrils shifting in rhythmic pulses. "This way," it said, pointing to the left. "How do you know?" Lila asked, suspicion creeping into her voice. "I can sense the flow of energy," SCI-FI explained. "Life thrives in that direction." It was an answer Lila didn't fully understand, but she didn't have time to argue. "Fine. Let's move." The group pressed on, and SCI-FI's guidance proved accurate. The tunnel widened, and fresh air wafted in, carrying with it the faint scent of pine. Hope surged among the survivors as they realized they were nearing the surface. But their relief was short-lived. A deafening screech erupted behind them, followed by the rapid clatter of Valerii claws on stone. The insectoids had found them. "Run!" Lila shouted, taking up the rear to cover their escape. She fired her rifle, the bursts of light illuminating the nightmarish forms of the Valerii. They were a grotesque blend of exoskeleton and sinew, their multifaceted eyes gleaming with predatory intent. SCI-FI stopped and turned, its tendrils flaring like a halo. "Go, Lila Hayward," it said, its voice calm despite the chaos. "I will hold them." Lila's heart lurched. "No. We need you." "You can't." "There is no time to argue," SCI-FI interrupted gently. "Your people's survival depends on your leadership. I will rejoin you if I can." Lila hesitated, torn between her duty to the survivors and her instinct to protect the being that had saved her life. But the Valerii were closing in, and she had no choice. With a heavy heart, she nodded. "Don't die, Sarakai." "I will endeavor not to," the alien replied with a faint, almost mischievous smile. As Lila led the group toward the exit, she glanced back and saw Sarakai standing tall, its glow intensifying. The alien raised its hands, and a pulse of golden energy erupted from its form, washing over the Valerii. The creatures shrieked in pain, their advance halted as the light seared through them. The survivors emerged into the forest, gasping for breath. Lila's mind raced, torn between relief and guilt. She had left Sarakai behind, but she knew the alien wasn't defenseless. Still, the uncertainty gnawed at her. Hours passed before Sarakai reappeared, its light dimmer but its posture unwavering. Lila ran to meet it, her heart leaping with relief. "You're alive," she said, unable to keep the emotion from her voice. "For now," Sarakai replied, its tone tinged with exhaustion. "But we must keep moving. The Valerii will not stop." Lila nodded, determination hardening her features. "Then let's make sure they regret underestimating us." Together, they led the survivors deeper into the wilderness, their bond growing stronger with every step. Unbeknownst to them, their alliance would soon shape the fate of not just humanity, but the entire galaxy. The mission to evacuate the remaining survivors from SCI-FI became a race against time. With the Valerii hot on their heels, Lila and Dr. Sarakai worked tirelessly to lead the civilians to safety. The alien doctor's healing milk was now their most valuable asset, a secret weapon that allowed their small group to survive against impossible odds. News of Sarakai's miraculous abilities spread faster than Lila anticipated. From whispers among the rescued civilians to intercepted military communications, the stories of an alien healer began to inspire hope among the battered human forces. But it also painted a target on their back. In the weeks that followed their escape from SCI-FI, Sarakai and Lila joined a fragmented resistance group stationed on the war-torn colony of Zenthra Prime. The colony had become a staging ground for humanity's desperate fight against the Valerii. Though resources were scarce, morale was even scarcer. When Sarakai entered the makeshift medical camp, every pair of eyes turned toward the alien. Soldiers, medics, and civilians alike stared, some with open awe, others with suspicion. Lila stepped forward, addressing the group with the commanding tone of a seasoned officer. "This is Dr. Sarakai," she began. "It's not human, but it's here to save us. If you're alive to hear my voice, you owe it to the miracle it carries." She gestured toward the alien, whose glowing presence seemed to dim slightly under the weight of so many scrutinizing gazes. Sarakai stepped forward, raising its hands in a gesture of peace. "I do not ask for your trust," it said, its melodic voice resonating through the camp. "Only that you let me do what I was born to do, to heal, to give, to ensure life continues." The tension in the room began to ease as Sarakai moved among the wounded, offering its milk to those in need. The skeptical stares softened into expressions of wonder as shattered limbs healed, infections vanished, and hope returned to the weary. By the time Sarakai finished its rounds, the camp was buzzing with renewed energy. Soldiers who had been resigned to death now spoke of victory. Lila watched from a distance, pride swelling in her chest as she saw the change Sarakai had brought. Later that night, as the camp settled into an uneasy calm, Lila approached Sarakai, who was seated by a flickering lantern. The alien looked weary, its glow dimmer than usual. "You did good today," Lila said, sitting beside it. Sarakai tilted its head. "Good is subjective. I did what was necessary." "Well, whatever you call it, you gave them something they haven't had in a long time. Hope." The alien's tendrils shifted in what Lila had come to recognize as a contemplative gesture. "Hope is a fragile thing, Lila Hayward. It must be nurtured carefully, lest it shatter under the weight of despair." Lila nodded, understanding all too well. "What happens when you run out of this milk?" she asked after a moment. The question had been gnawing at her since their first encounter. Sarakai hesitated before answering. It is not infinite. The synthesis of the milk requires great care and resources that I do not have here. Each drop is precious, and its creation drains me. Drains you how? Lila pressed. My people live by the principle of giving, Sarakai explained. Our life force is intertwined with our ability to heal. The more I give, the more of myself I expend. Lila's stomach twisted at the implication. So, you're telling me this miracle you're giving us is costing you your life? Sarakai's glowing eyes met hers, calm and resolute. To give is to live. Without purpose, existence is hollow. If my efforts ensure your people's survival, then I have fulfilled my purpose. Lila wanted to argue, to tell Sarakai it didn't have to sacrifice itself, but she saw the quiet determination in its gaze. There was no changing its min. As Sarakai's reputation spread, so too did the threat it posed to the Valerii. The insectoid invaders were a hive-minded species, operating under a single, relentless directive: consume and conquer. The stories of Sarakai's healing milk reached them through captured humans, and they recognized the danger it represented. On Zenthra Prime, the first signs of the Valerei's growing interest came in the form of increased attack. The resistance group faced wave after wave of Valerii drones, their tactics growing more precise with each skirmish. Lila suspected the hive was actively hunting Sarakai. They're targeting you, Lila said one evening as she and Sarakai pored over a map of the region. I am aware, Sarakai replied calmly. Their hive mind senses the disruption my presence causes. Hope is an anomaly they cannot comprehend. Lila frowned. Then we need to move you somewhere safe. If they capture you, I cannot abandon those who need me, Sarakai interrupted. To do so would betray everything I stand for. Lila clenched her fists, frustrated by the alien's stubborn selflessness. You can't save anyone if you're dead. Perhaps, Sarakai said softly. But life is measured not in its length, but in its impact. Before Lila could respond, an urgent call came through their comms. The Valerii were launching an all-out assault on the camp. Lila and Sarakai rushed to the command center, where the resistance leaders were already preparing for battle. They're bringing everything they've got, said Commander Reese, a grizzled veteran with a cybernetic arm. If they break through, we're done. Lila glanced at Sarakai, whose glow dimmed slightly. She could see the strain etched into the alien's posture, but its resolve remained unshaken. Then we don't let them break through, Lila said, her voice steady. We hold the line. The battle for Zenthra Prime was unlike anything Lila had ever faced. The Valerii came in endless waves, their chittering war cries echoing through the night. Human soldiers fought valiantly, but the enemy's numbers seemed insurmountable. Amid the chaos, Sarakai became the heart of the resistance. It moved through the battlefield like a phantom, healing the wounded and revitalizing the weary. Each drop of its milk was a spark of hope, a reminder that the fight wasn't over. But the cost was clear. With every life saved, Sarakai's glow dimmed further. Lila fought alongside the alien, her rifle cutting down Valerii drones as she protected Sarakai from harm. The bond between them grew stronger with every moment, forged in the crucible of battle. By dawn, the Valerii forces had retreated, their assault repelled by the unyielding resistance. The camp was battered but victorious. Cheers erupted among the survivors, but Lila's focus was on Sarakai. The alien stood at the center of the camp, its glow faint but steady. Lila approached, her heart heavy with worry. You're pushing yourself too hard, she said. Sarakai turned to her, its eyes soft. And yet, I remain. For how long? Lila asked, her voice cracking. How much more can you give before there's nothing left? Sarakai reached out, placing a hand on her shoulder. As long as there is life to save, I will give. That is my purpose. Lila swallowed hard, a lump forming in her throat. She wanted to argue, to tell Sarakai it didn't have to carry the burden alone. But she saw the determination in its gaze and knew it wouldn't listen. I don't want to lose you, she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. Sarakai's tendrils shifted, and its eyes softened. Nor do I wish to part from you, Lila Hayward. But for now, we must focus on what lies ahead. Lila nodded, her resolve hardening. If Sarakai was willing to give everything for humanity, then she would do everything in her power to protect it. Together, they would face whatever came next. The days following the victory at Zenthra Prime were a haze of rebuilding and preparation. The resistance forces worked tirelessly to fortify their position, but everyone knew it was only a matter of time before the Valerii returned. Lila found herself at the center of the efforts, coordinating defenses and ensuring the survivors stayed hopeful. Yet, no matter how busy she was, her thoughts always drifted back to Sarakai. The alien healer spent most of its time tending to the wounded, its presence a calming balm for the frayed nerves of the resistance. Each time Sarakai healed another soldier or patched up a child's scraped knee, it seemed to grow weaker. Its glow, once vibrant and steady, now flickered like a dying flame. "You're running on fumes," Lila said one evening as she found Sarakai seated in the quiet corner of the medical tent. The alien was weaving together a strange, bioluminescent substance that pulsed faintly in its hands. Sarakai didn't look up. "I am functioning adequately." "Don't give me that," Lila shot back, crossing her arms. "You're barely holding it together, and you know it?" Sarakai's tendrils shifted, a sign of weariness. "I cannot afford to stop. Every moment I rest is a moment someone might die." Lila sighed, her frustration bubbling over. "You're not invincible, Sarakai. If you burn yourself out, who's going to save the rest of us?" The alien finally looked up, its luminous eyes meeting hers. There was a quiet sorrow in its gaze that made Lila's heart ache. "I understand your concern, Lila Hayward. But if the choice is between my exhaustion and another's death, the decision is clear." "Not to me," Lila said softly. She knelt beside Sarakai, her voice trembling. "You matter too, Sarakai. Don't you see that?" Sarakai's tendrils stilled, and for a moment, there was silence between them. Finally, the alien spoke, its voice tinged with an unfamiliar vulnerability. "Among my people, the act of giving is all that defines us. To take, be it rest, time, or resources, feels unnatural." "Well, maybe it's time you learned how to take," Lila said, her tone firm. "You've given us everything, Sarakai. Let us give something back." Before Sarakai could respond, the camp's alarm blared, cutting through the night like a knife. Lila was on her feet in an instant, her rifle slung over her shoulder. Sarakai rose more slowly, its movements sluggish but purposeful. "What now?" Lila muttered as they hurried to the command post. Commander Reese met them, his face grim. "We've got movement on the scanners. A massive Valerii force is converging on our location." "How long do we have?" Lila asked, her stomach sinking. "Not long," Reese replied. "An hour, maybe two. They're throwing everything they've got at us." Lila exchanged a glance with Sarakai. The alien's glow dimmed further, but its resolve remained unshaken. "We will not falter," it said. Reese snorted. "That's easy to say, but we're outgunned and outnumbered. Even with Sarakai's miracles, I don't see how we hold them off." "We don't need to hold them off," Lila said, a plan already forming in her mind. "We just need to buy enough time for the civilians to evacuate." "Evacuate where?" Reese asked, skeptical. "There's a valley a few clicks east," Lila explained. "It's heavily forested, with plenty of places to hide. If we can lead the Valerii away from the camp, the civilians might have a chance." "It's a long shot," Reese said, frowning. "It's the only shot we've got," Lila countered. She turned to Sarakai. "Can you manage a diversion?" Sarakai tilted its head, considering. "I can create a luminous barrier that will attract their attention. It will not last long, but it may buy you the time you need." "Good," Lila said. "Reese, get the civilians moving. I'll lead a team to hold the line while Sarakai sets up the diversion." Reese nodded reluctantly. "You'd better come back in one piece, Hayward." "No promises," Lila said with a grim smile. The next hour was a whirlwind of preparation. The resistance fighters fortified their positions, setting up crude barricades and digging trenches. Sarakai worked tirelessly alongside them, its hands weaving glowing threads of energy that pulsed with an otherworldly light. Lila watched the alien with a mix of awe and concern. She could see the strain etched into its movements, the flicker of its glow growing weaker by the minute. "Don't overdo it," she warned as Sarakai finished constructing the luminous barrier. Sarakai turned to her, its eyes soft but resolute. "I will endure." The first wave of Valerii arrived just as the evacuation began. The insectoids swarmed toward the camp, their chittering war cries echoing through the night. Lila's team opened fire, their weapons cutting through the darkness with bursts of light. Sarakai's barrier flared to life, a brilliant dome of golden energy that drew the Valerii like moths to a flame. The creatures clawed and hissed at the barrier, their focus entirely on the glowing structure. "It's working," Lila said, her voice barely audible over the chaos. "Keep holding." But the Valerii were relentless. Wave after wave crashed against the barrier, their sheer numbers threatening to overwhelm it. Lila fought with everything she had, her rifle blazing as she took down one creature after another. Around her, the resistance fighters held their ground, their determination unwavering despite the odds. Sarakai stood at the heart of the barrier, its form flickering like a dying star. Lila's chest tightened as she saw the toll the effort was taking on the alien. She wanted to call out, to tell Sarakai to stop, but she knew it wouldn't listen. Not when so much was at stake. As the last of the civilians disappeared into the forest, Lila shouted into her comm Reese, "Are they clear?" "Clear enough," came the reply. "Now get out of there." Lila turned to Sarakai. "Time to go." The alien hesitated, its glowing eyes fixed on the advancing Valerii. Then, with a final burst of energy, it collapsed the barrier, unleashing a shockwave that sent the creatures reeling. Lila rushed to Sarakai's side as the alien stumbled, its glow all but extinguished. "I've got you," she said, slinging its arm over her shoulder. "Let's move." Together, they retreated into the forest, the sounds of battle fading behind them. By the time they reached the rendezvous point, Lila was half carrying Sarakai. The alien's body was limp, its light reduced to a faint shimmer. "You did it," she said, her voice choked with emotion. "You saved them." Sarakai's eyes fluttered open, and it managed a weak smile. "Not alone," it whispered. Lila tightened her grip on the alien, her heart heavy with gratitude and fear. She had never felt so fiercely protective of anyone before. As they joined the survivors in the valley, she made a silent vow. No matter what it took, she would keep Sarakai alive. They needed it, but she needed it too. The air in the forest was thick with tension as the survivors huddled among the dense trees, their whispers barely audible over the faint hum of distant Valerii patrols. Lila sat beside Sarakai, who lay propped against the trunk of a gnarled tree, its glow reduced to the faintest flicker. Around them, the makeshift camp was a patchwork of humans trying to catch their breath, regroup, and plan the next move. "Drink this," Lila said softly, pressing a canteen to Sarakai's lips. It sipped carefully, though its tendrils drooped with exhaustion. "How are they holding up?" Sarakai asked, its voice weaker than before. "They'll manage," Lila replied, her tone firm but not without a tremor of worry. "But they're looking to us for what's next." Sarakai's glow pulsed faintly as it regarded her. "And what do you see, Lila Hayward?" She hesitated. The weight of leadership was never something she had sought, but in the chaos, people naturally turned to her. Yet even she felt lost now. "I see a bunch of scared people who still have hope because of you. But that hope won't last if we don't figure out how to turn this around." Sarakai's gaze lingered on her, and it reached out with a tendril to gently touch her shoulder. "Hope is resilient, Lila. It persists even when all else seems lost. That is the gift your kind possesses." Lila scoffed, though her lips curved into a small smile. If only that gift came with a manual. Before Sarakai could respond, Commander Reese approached, his cybernetic arm gleaming in the pale moonlight. Scouts report Valerii movement a few miles out, he said grimly. They're searching for us. It's only a matter of time before they close in. Lila's jaw clenched. How long do we have? Hours at best, Rhys said. We can't stay here. We need a real plan. I have one, Sarakai said, its voice barely audible but steady enough to command attention. Rhys and Lila exchanged a glance before crouching closer to the alien. Let's hear it, Rhys said cautiously. The Valerii operate as a hive mind, Sarakai began. Their strength lies in their unity, but that unity can also be their weakness. If we can disrupt their central node, the nexus that links their consciousnesses, we can disable their coordination. And where's this nexus? Lila asked. Deep within their primary command ship, Sarakai replied. It is heavily fortified, but its destruction would cripple their forces across this region. Rhys shook his head. That's a suicide mission. Getting close enough to the command ship is impossible, let alone destroying it. Not impossible, Sarakai corrected. Difficult, yes, but achievable with the right strategy. Lila leaned forward. What's the plan? Sarakai hesitated, its glow dimming further. I can guide you into the ship undetected, but to reach the nexus, I will need to use the last of my life force. The disruption I create will allow you to strike. Lila's heart stopped. No. Absolutely not. There is no other way, Sarakai said softly. The nexus is impenetrable by conventional means. My abilities can create an opening, but only at great cost. That's not a plan, Lila snapped, her voice cracking. That's a death sentence. Rhys exhaled sharply, his expression grim. It might be our only shot. No. Lila's voice rose, drawing the attention of nearby survivors. She ignored their curious glances, focusing solely on Sarakai. We'll find another way. There has to be another way. Sarakai reached out, its tendril brushing her cheek. Lila, you have given me a gift I never thought I would know, connection. Your people's will to fight, your capacity for hope, your ability to love. They are worth every sacrifice. Tears welled in Lila's eyes. Don't talk like this is the end. For me it may be, Sarakai said gently. But for you, for your people, it is the beginning. The journey to the Valerii command ship was perilous. Sarakai guided them through the labyrinthine terrain, avoiding patrols with uncanny precision. As the small strike team crept closer to the towering alien vessel, the tension among them was palpable. Every step felt like a gamble, every breath a risk. When they finally reached the ship, Lila felt the enormity of their task settle heavily on her shoulders. The Valerii vessel loomed above them, a monolithic structure of blackened metal and pulsating bioorganic light. The air thrummed with the energy of the hive mind, a low, insidious hum that set Lila's teeth on edge. Once we're inside, stay close, Sarakai instructed. The nexus is at the heart of the ship. We must move quickly. Lila nodded, gripping her rifle tightly. Her gaze lingered on Sarakai, and she fought back the lump in her throat. This couldn't be the last time she saw it alive. The team infiltrated the ship through a maintenance hatch, the alien corridors twisting and writhing like a living organism. Sarakai led the way, its glow dim but steady, casting just enough light to guide their path. As they approached the Nexus chamber, the Resistance fighters encountered heavier resistance. Valerii drones swarmed toward them, their chittering cries echoing through the halls. Lila and the others fought fiercely, their weapons blazing as they carved a path forward. When they finally reached the Nexus chamber, Lila's breath caught. The room was a cavernous expanse of shimmering light and pulsating energy. At its center stood the Nexus, a massive, crystalline structure that pulsed in rhythm with the hive mind's hum. "This is it," Sarakai said, its voice barely audible. "I will create the disruption. You must destroy the Nexus." Lila grabbed its arm, her eyes pleading. "You don't have to do this." Sarakai cupped her face with a trembling hand. "I do." Before she could stop it, Sarakai stepped forward, its body glowing brighter than ever before. The light intensified, illuminating the entire chamber as the alien channeled every ounce of its life force into the disruption. The hive mind's hum faltered, the crystalline nexus flickering as the connection weakened. "Now, Lila!" Sarakai cried, its voice reverberating through the chamber. Tears streaming down her face, Lila raised her weapon and fired. The nexus shattered under the barrage, its fragments raining down like falling stars. The hum of the hive mind went silent, and the Valerii drones collapsed, lifeless. Lila turned to Sarakai, but the alien was already fading. Its glow dimmed to nothing as it collapsed into her arms, its body light as air. "Sarakai," she whispered, her voice breaking. "Please, don't go." A faint shimmer passed through Sarakai's form, and it managed a final, soft smile. "Thank you, Lila Hayward, for showing me what it means to live." And then it was gone. The aftermath was bittersweet. With the Nexus destroyed, the Valerii forces in the region were thrown into chaos, and humanity began to reclaim its lost territories. The Resistance's victory became a rallying cry for others, a turning point in the war. But for Lila, the cost was immeasurable. She carried Sarakai's memory with her, a constant ache in her chest. Yet, in her grief, she found a new purpose. She fought not just for humanity's survival, but for the ideals Sarakai had believed in: hope, connection, and the power of sacrifice. One day, as she stood on a hill overlooking a liberated colony, she felt a faint warmth against her skin. For a brief moment, she could have sworn she saw a flicker of golden light dancing on the wind. A smile broke through her tears. "Thank you, Sarakai," she whispered. "I'll keep going for you."